come January. Thank you both very much, Sue Hattersley and Sarah Sleet. Nearly 4,000 convicted drink drivers in England, Scotland and Wales have been given back their licences without undergoing the required medical checks. For more than 20 years, serious errors in the way data on drink driving convictions is shared between the police, the courts and the DVLA has led to some drivers slipping through the net. The requirement for a medical check applies to all those who were more than 2.5 times over the permitted alcohol limit when they were caught. Jeanette Miller is president of the Association of Motor Offence Lawyers. Tell us a bit of background to this, Jeanette. How has this happened?
Well, I understand the reason that this has happened is because the courts have failed to communicate to the DVLA the level of alcohol found to be in somebody's system when they're convicted of a drink driving offence. And ultimately, whilst when you are convicted and you're disqualified, you are entitled to have your licence back at the end of the period of disqualification, those in the category of high-risk offender, which is somebody with the level of 2.5 times or more in their limit, in their blood, should undergo a fairly extensive medical examination involving blood tests and a physical examination. That's to establish whether the person has a problem with either alcohol misuse or alcohol dependency before they are given their licence back. And it's that information that either has not been passed on by the courts in the first place, or if it has been passed on, has not been acted upon by the DVLA.
Which represents, in the words of the Minister, Mike Penning, a serious breakdown of communication.
Well, it is a serious breakdown in communication. I understand that the Minister actually mentioned a chap who had gone on to kill behind the wheel of a car, which is extremely unfortunate. However, I think it is perhaps slightly misleading to suggest that every person convicted of drink driving who is in the high-risk offender category does then go on to have an ongoing problem with either alcohol misuse or alcohol dependency. To many clients that I encounter, the drink drive allegation is the trigger to seeking help if they have got a problem, as it's a trigger to recovery, really. And for many, it is a very stupid one-off mistake. So I don't doubt that there are those in the high-risk offender category that do require further, the public requires further protection from them. But I'm not sure that the figures that have been cited are representative of there being X thousand drivers back on the roads that pose a major threat to society.
Let me bring in Julie Townsend from the Road Safety Charity Break. What's your reaction to this, Julie?
Well, we think it's appalling that this problem has been continuing for such a huge period of time, and potentially thousands of drivers being relicensed without having the appropriate checks. We have this system in place to protect the general public and, of course, to protect those drivers who have been disqualified. And it's absolutely imperative that that system is adhered to prevent unnecessary tragedies and devastation being caused to families.
In your experience, do these figures tell the full story?
Well, our understanding is that investigation of the problem is still ongoing, and that so far 4,000 drivers have been identified as having been classed as high risk, and yet slipped through the net and been automatically relicensed when they should have had a medical examination. Our understanding is that there are many thousands more cases where nothing can be done because those records can't be retrieved. So this could potentially be an extensive problem, and we hope very much that the investigation is going to be concluded quickly and the problem resolved, so that we don't see drivers being let back on the road who shouldn't be, and potentially going on to cause devastation.
I'll speak to the DVLA in a moment, but they have acted upon this since it was uncovered as a result of what the Minister did. No licences have been reissued by the DVLA without the alcohol levels being provided. There are changes to the IT system to try and improve all this, the correcting of existing records. Are they now going down the correct road as far as you estimate?
It sounds that way. As you've said, it sounds like a very serious breakdown of communication has happened here. We are utterly dismayed that it's been going on for such a long period of time. Clearly, it needs to be rectified as quickly as possible. So it sounds like things are being sorted out, and we would hope very much that there aren't any further blunders in terms of adhering to this really important system.
Jeanette Miller, would you echo that things seem to be going in the right direction now?
Yes, I would. And also, one thing that perhaps has not been picked up on is the issue of the drink drive rehabilitation course. This is offered to most offenders, and to complete the course once you have been convicted, you have to complete it satisfactorily, which means you have to attend in a sober condition, and the court does get notified if that course has not been carried out successfully. Now, most drivers do accept that course, and even those in the high-risk offenders category. And I suspect that is an extra measure, but I do agree that once in this category, you should have to undergo a medical to get your licence back.
Well, David Evans speaks for the DVLA and joins me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How has this gone on for 20 years?
First, let me say that I regret that these errors were made. We all have a part to play in keeping drink drivers off the road, and regrettably and unfortunately, errors were made by the police, the court service and DVLA. Having found this problem, we've investigated it, we've identified the cause of it, and we've fixed it at the DVLA end and at the court service end. We now have a number of cases we're treating as a priority, and we're working our way through these.
But how come it went on 20 years without you noticing it?
The information is passed from one organisation to another, and in these cases the information passage broke down. The problems occurred in all three organisations, and we've had to trace it back through all three.
What of the 3,895 people identified as having a licence when they should have had a medical check first? What happens to them now?
We've written now to all these people that we've identified so far. We have powers to require them to come in and take this medical now, and they will have to do so.
But what of the other records that presumably were either not retained over a 20-year period or for some other reason are no longer accessible?
The court service and the police are working through another group of cases now to try and recover the data that is missing for them. As we get information on those, we'll react to every one of them.
But do you not accept that while that process is going on, there are some people out there driving who shouldn't be?
There are some people who have received a driving licence without having undergone the necessary medical screening, and we're trying to catch up with these people as quickly as possible, put them through the test, and then make a decision whether they're fit to hold a driving licence or not.
And when you say some people, I mean, going back to what the Minister said, in total, 265,225 driver records have been found to be missing the relevant information on alcohol levels. Now, correct alcohol levels have now been obtained for 50,330 of those, so that's about a fifth. That still leaves a lot of people that you don't know about, doesn't it?
Well, there are a large number of people who are in this category who haven't yet come back to reapply for a licence, or their disqualification's finished, they've chosen not to. All these records are blocked. Nobody can come back into us now and get their licence back without having completed this medical and completed it successfully. If they don't get a licence.
I mentioned some of the things that you have introduced since this emerged, and you heard relatively cautious welcome for them from both my other guests. Just explain what you've done. No licences reissued, first of all, by the DVLA without the alcohol levels being provided.
If somebody is classed as a high-risk offender, they can be classed as that because they're 2.5 times the limit, because they've had multiple offences, or because they refuse to give a specimen. The problem we found only affects the group that were 2.5 times over the limit. So if people have multiple offences, we've caught them, we've brought them in for tests already.
What of the changes to IT? What difference will they make?
The changes have done have stopped the court service being able to send us a notification of a conviction and penalty points or disqualification to put on the record without the blood alcohol level being recorded in it. Once we've got this, we can assess whether it is 2.5 times the limit, and if so, mark them as a high-risk offender and make sure they're called in for a medical when the disqualification ends, if they choose to reapply for a licence.
Just as a final reflection on this, do you not have to accept that had it not been for those in Parliament saying it's time that we took a look at this, we would be none the wiser today than we were a year ago that this was ever going on. We'd now be talking about 21 years when this was happening rather than 20.
Well, as I said, I regret that these errors occurs and that it took so long to find them. Now we have found them, we've rigorously and thoroughly pursued them, we're investigating all the cases, and we're calling these people in for their medicals now.
Thank you very much for coming on the programme. David Evans, who speaks for the DVLA. Your thoughts via the website, of course, bbc.co.uk/radio4. You and yours, and thanks as well to Jeanette Miller and Julie Townsend from Break. It's 12:29.